Welcome to the Lifework podcast, where we help you discover joy and purpose in your work through Christ-centered insights and practical advice that transforms your career into a fulfilling calling.
Hey listeners, choosing the right college is a daunting task, and we understand how overwhelming it can be. At Williams Baptist University, our preview days are specifically designed to offer you a comprehensive look at campus life in just half a day. You'll engage in a mock class, meet passionate faculty, and get straightforward answers about the enrollment process. By the end of your visit, you will leave feeling confident in the choice that lies ahead. Visit williamsbu.edu/preview to register today.
Well, Ryan, we're continuing our exploration of purpose and calling, and had an opportunity to hear your story, and thank you for allowing me to share mine. I do want to look at the one who does the calling.
Yeah.
And I want to get into what I call the Jesus calling.
Right.
But before we do, I want to share some information with you and our listeners that came. It's a little bit dated, but I think the findings are still relevant. It's from a survey, a report done by the Harvard Graduate School of Education. They did a survey of adults 18 to 25. Those that responded to the survey shared some challenges driving depression and anxiety. Half of the young adults reported not knowing what to do with my life, which is directly related to the topic we're exploring of purpose and calling. The most common expression was a lack of meaning or purpose. 58% that took the survey said in some way. So half of the responders said, I have no meaning or purpose in my life. Yeah.
That's just sad.
36% said they struggle with anxiety. 29% said they experienced depression. 56% said they had financial concerns and pressures. 45% said that they felt that things were falling apart in their lives. 44% said they had lack of any meaningful relationships. 34% said they suffered from severe loneliness. It's not a very pretty picture.
No, certainly doesn't sound like it.
And the respondents of this survey were responding in a context about purpose in life.
Right.
I'm hopeful that I am faithful to Scripture when I am saying that God created us to have a purpose, and He created us to have a calling, and a big expression of that calling comes from Jesus Himself. So what I would like to do is I would like to read from Matthew chapter 4, where Jesus is actually calling some to follow Him. So in Matthew chapter 4, beginning verse 18, we read, As He, that is Jesus, was walking along the Sea of Galilee, He saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Follow me, He told them, and I will make you fish for people. Or as some translations say, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately they left their nets and followed Him. Going on from there, He saw two other brothers, James the son of Zebedee and his brother John. They were in a boat with Zebedee their father, preparing their nets, and He called them. Immediately they left their boat and their father and followed Him. Now, historically, whenever we talk about this passage, at least in the context in which I have often run, circles I run in.
The circles you run in.
Yeah, I run a circle. This is often
What
interpreted.
circles are those?
Ministerial circles.
Okay, all right. Just curious.
It's
not a gang.
No.
Not a street gang.
Focus.
I'm doing my best.
Yes. So I have heard this interpreted as a call into ministry, and I think that is a legitimate expression of it. And you and I both have shared about our unique callings into vocational ministry. But I'm also interpreting this beyond just a call to ministry, a call to follow Jesus.
Right.
And in the context of these men, it's in the terms of their vocation and the play of words off of spinning into make you from fishermen to fishers of men, right, and embedding the vocational idea in this. I think when we talk about calling from a biblical worldview, it has to be embedded in the fact that Jesus is calling us, first of all, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, into a personal relationship with Him, the gospel calling,
Right.
the primary calling, the calling to come to God through repentance and faith, and His good news of the gospel is secured in Jesus.
And I think here the call to salvation and the call to follow Him in what's clearly a kind of vocational ministry go hand in hand.
Agreed.
And the same thing happens in the life of Paul, by the way.
It
Saul,
does.
when he's on the road to Damascus, and he's both called to follow Jesus at that moment and called to be a missionary to the Gentiles.
One of the things that impresses me from this passage is how ultimate and all-encompassing this calling is. I mean, the act of physically getting up and leaving and going.
Right.
There's nothing left behind when you do that. I mean, the totality of all of who you are, the totality of all that you have are represented, and I am physically leaving one part of life to go after Jesus with another part of life.
Sure.
So it's almost like this calling has this ultimate surrendered, starting with the new birth, being born again, but experienced daily in continual expressions of following Jesus.
And again, it's Christ who takes the initiative in calling them. I mean, it's, you read this passage, and it wasn't that they were looking for Jesus.
He was looking for them.
He was looking for them. I mean, the text says he saw two brothers, Simon, and he saw Peter. And then he, again, verse 21, he saw two other brothers, James and John, the sons of Zebedee. And, it's Christ who takes that initiative. They weren't seeking him. He was seeking them out. And I think that's, a helpful reminder about the grace that we are completely indebted to in the call that God places on our lives, both to salvation and to particular expressions of ministry calling like these men experienced.
Yep. And it's even interesting to me that knowing their story from the Bible, it's not a perfect journey.
No.
So they left everything and began that journey.
Yeah, I mean they were oftentimes knuckleheads. When you read the Gospels, and what we in New Testament scholarship call there's a criterion of embarrassment. I mean it's they tell stories about themselves that don't necessarily always paint them in the most positive light. But again, what's clear here is that these are ordinary dudes. They're ordinary men. They are, the equivalent of a blue collar worker, maybe more impoverished than that. But they're regular guys, and Jesus didn't go into the synagogues calling out the elite or the educated. He called out fishermen and tax collectors and the like. And I was listening actually at a dinner with a pastor friend of mine last night, and he was talking about he had some needs in his church, vocational ministry needs that needed to be filled. And he said, we really did consider for a moment, doing a nationwide, church search where we put out, a call for resumes and the seminary trained guys and whatnot. But there were just some very committed laymen in our church who we saw had some unique gifts and who we thought would be really good fits for the role. And through a process that he walked them through, they sensed a call to vocational ministry. And I just thought that was a really kind of neat, story that, again, reminds you, that's the kind of people that Jesus calls. He calls people who are not necessarily going to be on paper, the people whose resumes are, great, but he calls people who are going to be obedient. And that's exactly what he does with these brothers who happen to be fishermen.
That's right. And you alluded to something I think that needs to be highlighted as well. It was a shared journey of their calling.
Yeah, they didn't do it by themselves,
did not.
they?
No, they went with each other, and eventually they would join others in this calling.
Right.
And I think that's a component that goes back even to the Genesis account of the cultural mandate of created for purpose, created for work, created vocation. It was in the context of doing that within a community. Then Adam and Eve was a helper made suitable for Adam for their work and their purpose in that calling. And God still brings us with others,
Right.
like-minded, like-hearted people in a shared journey in our calling.
Yeah, and again, they didn't do it alone. There's a couple of other, adjectives we could use. For one thing, they were like immediately comes to mind. Immediately they left their nets. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed them. I mean, there was a sense of urgency when God called them to do this. And again, similar to both of the stories that we've expressed about a call to ministry, we felt a sense of urgency. We felt a sense of, Jesus has called us to do this. We need to go do this, and we don't need to put it off, and we don't need to delay. Their response is immediate. Their response is also sacrificial.
Yeah.
Because, they're leaving behind their livelihood. They're leaving behind possessions. Possessions that they had. They might not have had much, but they're leaving behind what they have, their boats, their nets. And, of course, the sons of Zebedee there, they leave their father behind, which is, they made some genuine sacrifices to take up this particular calling. And I think the other thing about this calling is it's transformative. It changes their lives forever.
Well, I was about to say thoroughly transforming.
Yeah.
A note I have here, he transforms who we are. He transforms what we want. He transforms what we do. He transforms where we go.
Right.
He transforms the direction and purpose of our life.
Right.
And again, the getting up and going doesn't mean it is immediately perfect.
Right.
There would be struggles and ups and downs
Right.
and some detours along the way in this living out and experiencing out the initial calling of Jesus on our life. So it's absolute in its demand and cost, but it plays out experientially as we follow him in our daily acts of devotion and surrender to him.
And I think another thing that sticks out here in this passage is that Jesus says, I'm going to teach you to be fishers of men. There's a call to discipleship. There's a call to formation. There's a call to training that's involved in this. And I think one thing that's kind of a common thing that a lot of young men who are feeling the call to pastoral ministry feel in their lives is a sense of that I need to go learn how to do this.
Right.
And in a perfect world, a lot of that happens in the local church. It doesn't always happen like it should. But there's also a reason why we have institutions like what we are part of here, in a Baptist university or in a seminary setting. I don't think that. Again, the specialties that we're able to do in a university setting, you can't necessarily always get those in every local church context. But it's important to have a season of training. And just last week we saw the loss of Dr. Jim Shaddix, and he had a funeral for him at Southeastern Seminary. And you saw the same photograph I did of many well-known pastors in our country who spread out across our convention, who were trained by somebody like Dr. Shaddix, those Emmaus groups. And I've thought and meditated on that a lot the last couple of days about
Me too.
the way that a person makes a significant impact is in making disciples and pouring your heart, your life, your livelihood, your training into others. And I think that's what Jesus does for these guys. This is what Jesus does for these disciples, and that's something I think that we can replicate as we see the work of God happening in other people's lives.
I want to play off of something you said a moment ago, and I want to fully affirm the call to vocational ministry that is unfolding in this Matthew chapter 4 passage. I also think I'm hopeful by way of right application, playing off of these men in their work. When Jesus called them, that calling embraced their work.
Yeah.
That there's a difference in having a job and having a calling. And I think Jesus not only transforms the lives of those that he calls, I think he transforms the work that they do. So that we know from other places they would eventually go back and do the work of fishermen, that they did fish, that they still earned a living doing that.
Right.
But I also am convinced that it wasn't just a job anymore.
Right.
That the calling to follow Jesus embraced the calling of their work.
Right.
And infused within that fishing.
Right.
A sense of the sacred, a sense of purpose, a sense that God is pleased with them and is involved with them in providing for their families, providing for their communities, and doing good, hard work for his glory and the good of his creation.
Sure.
So when Jesus calls us, he's calling us, but he's also taking along the work that we have done.
Right.
And we may continue to do or may not continue to do, but whatever direction he leads us in that work is part of the calling to follow him.
Right. Absolutely. And you know, the the call to vocational ministry, again, I want to speak specifically about pastoral ministry, is an extension of the kind of call that we see described in like Ephesians 4, you know, where there are people who have been called and commissioned to do and fulfill certain roles and offices in the church.
Absolutely.
That they have been spiritually gifted in a way that, you know, that again, maybe not everybody has that particular kind of spiritual gift. But also from 1 Timothy 3:1, they have an overwhelming desire to do ministry. I mean, they have a heart to go and to do it. And my sense is that, you know, even people who wrestle with the call to ministry vocationally, they move from that sort of resistance that we talked about to I can't imagine myself wanting to do anything else.
Yeah.
And that's the point in life, you know, that I eventually came to. I think I would be miserable trying to do absolutely anything else. I also think, as Scott Pace and Shane Pruitt talked about in their book, Calling Out the Called, there is a sense in which you start to sense that God is using you to impact others. You start to sense that you are making a difference in other people's lives, and you enjoy that. You take great pleasure in serving other people and helping meeting their spiritual needs. And then I think there's, again, that affirmation that we get from others, the affirmation where people see things in ourselves that we don't necessarily see in ourselves, you know. So they see things in us that we don't necessarily see in ourselves.
A final observation I want to make, kind of coming full circle on the passage, Jesus issues the call, so he is the originator. He's also the focus of the call.
Yeah.
Follow me.
Follow me. Yeah.
And so you have this person-focused direction of the calling.
Right.
And for lack of a better way of saying, I call this the holy indifference part of a calling. And what I mean by that is we follow him. We don't follow them.
Right.
We follow him. We don't follow ourselves. So indifference is not insensitive. It doesn't mean we're uncaring or removed from the world. It doesn't mean we're ignorant or unaware of our circumstances. But what it does mean is We care about what Jesus thinks, not what others may think. We care about what Jesus says, not what others may say about us. We care about what Jesus wants to do to us, not what others may do to us. We become wholly indifferent to the whims and the desires of others in the pursuit of the one who has called us and the one who is the object of our calling.
Right.
Good place to stop.
That's a very good place to stop.
Amen.
Hey everybody, I want to tell you about our new agribusiness degree. Our agribusiness program empowers you with the skills and connections you need to thrive, ensuring you never feel lost or unprepared. With hands-on learning and personalized support, you'll have everything you need to build a rewarding career. We are launching this new degree this coming fall semester. If you visit williamsbu.edu/agribusiness, you can learn more about this degree, apply for admissions, contact the faculty within the department, and more.